Hi, everybody. It's Colette Baron-Reid and Dr. Michael Lennox, the most amazing astrologer, and we are here to do the 2022 first 6-month forecast for this year. Obviously, it's this year because we are in 2022, so Happy New Year to you. And how this is going to work is that Michael is going to give his take on the energy, the astrology of that month. We're going to go month by month. And then I'm going to choose 4 of the traditional tarot to describe the energies and how we can help ourselves navigate these things. This is for everybody. So hold on to your hats. I think 2022 at least is going to be a better year than last year. That I do feel, that I know. So we are in a universal 6 year 2 in numerology, which is about relationships and healing those relationships. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce you to Dr. Michael Lennox, the Astro Wizard. Haha, that's what I call him. Anyway, take it away, Michael.
All right, honey. It's great to be here. Happy New Year. And of course, we always start out the new year in the Capricorn mansion, right? There's a lot of interesting things about January. On the one hand, there's a kind of yummy feeling because the planet Jupiter that brings bounty and abundance and prosperity is moving into one of his happiest territories, Pisces. And he's going to spend the entire month there and, move, of course, forward as the months go by, but the entire first month of the year has our sense of possibility, manifestation. Really, Pisces is the sign that was once the ruling sign of Jupiter.
Oh.
So in classic astrology, there's a relationship between Jupiter and Pisces that is exalted. So that's a kind of yummy thing. We do have some challenges with the month with regard to the fact that Venus is retrograde when we start the month, and she spends the whole month in this backward posture. That means that our emotional lives, our intimacy experiences, our relationship with our finances is being rewired. That's discombobulating. That's, any retrograde of a personal planet sets us up to be a little bit bumpy because our personal experience is being impacted.
Right.
The larger planets and retrogrades, not as much in terms of how they impact us, but Venus retrograde impacts our emotional experience and makes it richer, but more challenging because our feelings will be reflecting unconscious processing. Right. And then halfway through the month, Mercury goes retrograde. So the whole second half of the month, you've got both Venus and Mercury retrograde at the same time. And that does mean that the month has beautiful possibilities for the inside of your experience to rework how you think and process information, how you love and give and receive love and have intimacy. But man, we'll be bumping into a lot of furniture with those 2 planets retrograde for the second half of the month.
Right. Awesome. Okay, so that's really interesting that you mentioned about the finances too. So this is interesting. Okay, so how do we work with these energies? So these 4 cards, the first card is generosity. So this is this is interesting because it could be, this is typically when it could even be a bank giving money, or it could be taking it away. But in this case, it's kind of feeling like it's not meeting up. It's not aligning up with what's actually there. Maybe people overspent at Christmas, who knows? But January really is, according to this energetically, a time for repose and thinking. So that makes sense. I love Mercury retrogrades. I love them. So because it gives me a chance to really ask myself really important questions again, right?
About this. They're incredibly valuable.
And it's in Capricorn, right? Is it
Well, no, in Aquarius.
It's in Aquarius, which is about changing things, helping you innovate, etc. At the time, it happens to be in the Capricorn mansion, right? So it's in right. So we are thinking, we are innovating our thoughts about how and what we want to intend for ourselves, our goals, ambitions, etc. That's what this indicates here. The star, though, is that beautiful Aquarian card that says we just have to flow with this. That we just, it's okay that this is part of the experience, but this isn't anything to be freaked out about. This is about that, again, a continuation of a recalibration that's already been set in motion. It's not a surprise. It doesn't feel very jarring, but it gives us ideas. So this is, and the Queen of Swords allows us to be a little bit more detached. So we are, even though we're emotionally kind of rewiring, the fact that she's there says that you have the capacity to be in that higher ground, to look at it and with a little bit more of the observer on, as opposed to that reactive sense.
So is that card represents
Yeah.
a kind of an emotional kind of detached? Well,
Yes.
because that's what Aquarius represents.
Right?
So
Yeah.
that Venus is in there with Pluto going, blah, lugubrious of emotions. But Mercury will take us to thought processes that rise above that.
Yeah. And so it's not that hard. This is not as difficult a month as we think, because, and there's also a sense, there's a message in here for us to be more gentle with ourselves, because that's the generosity card, was the first one. Gentle with ourselves and other. And that makes sense because we are in a universal year of 6, which is about healing relationships. It's a relational year. So this is like, hey, it's going to pay to be kind to yourself and others while we all go through this. It's less combative than it is regenerative, and that means something dies, something gets reborn, etc. So this is still, for me, a beautiful way to start the year, and it's a sober way to start the year. But there's still a lot of hope there, right?
Love that.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and like my sobriety day is January 2nd. So I said 36 years.
Even more. I'm like, right at the new moon. I love that.
I know, every year. Okay, so let's talk about February. I'm going to pull the cards while you talk.
Well, so February is a little bit gentler in some ways than January. And not, it's definitely a lighter month of the year. In general, when we move into the Aquarius mansion, we are in original thinking, out of the box. What's new? I need freedom. Freedom is always a watchword when Aquarius comes around, because that's an energy that says, I can do anything I want. I can go anywhere I want. I can be anything that I want. And it doesn't have to be anything like what you look like or what you look like. So it's the mansion of the unique individual. Venus has just gone direct when we move into February. So we'll be wrapping up her shadow period really all month. She ends the shadow when we get right into March. That means that the entire month of February is like putting together the last pieces of emotional wisdom that you've gained by virtue of allowing the deep dive into the shadow, Venus and Pluto, the idea that Venus in Capricorn is helping us restructure how we give and receive love. So in some ways, it's an easier month because Venus is no longer moving backwards. And that means we'll be a little clearer emotionally and a lot less, pummeled by being an emotional process. But in some ways, Colette, I would even go to say that in a Venus retrograde, the third act, the direct shadow, when she's no longer backward moving, but hitting the same territory she's been over twice before, is almost more important, because it's the period where we are taking what we learned and weaving it into our practice, our process, our relationships, our experiences with others. So I love that this is a 6 year and that relationships figure into that way of perceiving time that we're in. But this is a month very much where we're about, how do I approach my love and intimacy in a new way, because all that I have learned. When we start the month off, Mercury is still retrograde, and he wraps up his shadow from the 6th to the 27th. That's fascinating to me, because the wrap up of the mental process is happening while the wrap up of the emotional process is happening. So we're doing a lot of weaving in February of new stuff. And since we're in relational consciousness, because of what Venus is doing, it's really interesting to me that Mars is chasing Venus all month. Literally, la, 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 chase, 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 chase. And he catches her right in the middle of the month, February 16th. And along the way, they trine Uranus. So let me give that in layman's terms. Mars is masculine principle that lives inside of each of us, our bodies, our choices, our goals, and how we make decisions. Venus is our hearts, our love, giving and receiving of love, intimacy, our relationship to our finances as well. We all have that in us. We all have masculine and feminine principle in us. The balance of it is different, individual to individual. We all have that. I choose, I be, I act, I receive. So when Mars and Venus are trying to catch up with each other, so are we. So our emotional process is ahead of Mars, our decision making, because she's forward energetically in the sky. She's also been through this whole, she's already been put away wet, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
At this point, Mars catching up to her in the middle of the month is like, huzzah, finally now I can integrate my masculine and feminine sides, incorporate the new emotional freedom I might be feeling right about now from all the work I've done in December, January, and early February. And the trine to Uranus that each of them make along the way excites them.
Right. Ooh.
Uranus excites to higher levels. So if Uranus and Mars trines, it's like be in your body powerfully, have goals and ambitions powerfully, make decisions powerfully, and know that Uranus is giving you that energy amplified. Venus says be in your heart fully. Trining Uranus is like this zing and the excitement that comes when we open our hearts fully, because now we can.
Right.
Makes the conjunction between Mars and Venus all the more powerful. So it's a light month in terms of the transits, and the flavor of the astrology isn't onerous, but it's very complex and kind of beautiful, and it's definitely a month of integrating.
Right. So with the tarot, it's very interesting because it started with 2 cards from the last month. So that right away tells us that we're still threading what happened, right, into the new. And it's again generosity, compassion, and kindness. It's in the relational way, but hope. So the star card is the Aquarian card again, right? This is a card of hope. It's a card of innovation. It's putting what you learned into motion. The Knight of Swords faces the other card. So whenever I do a reading and that happens, I'm like, oh, I'm learning something for sure, but it's exciting because it makes me feel hopeful. So February makes me feel hopeful after everything that I've looked at and experienced in January. And what I want to ask you is, did Jupiter, because this is also representative of an expansion, right? So is there still an expansion, like Jupiter still active early part of February? Or do we take the expansiveness of January and what we're integrating? Just curious, because it feels like we're integrating the expansion. Somehow we become more.
I love that you're asking this question, and the answer in a way is wait till March.
Okay.
Because Jupiter's moving through Pisces, but something that happens next month is the Sun and Neptune and Jupiter are coming together in the second week of March.
Makes sense.
The question you're asking is like, we're building towards
the expansion.
That's huge. So this month is really like a stepping stone to that.
Yeah, I'm just feeling it intuitively too, right? That I kept feeling that Jupiter was going to come back on the board, and he is. But this is also interesting because you talked about the Mars and Venus coming together mid-month, because this would be like the midpoint moving into this third week, which is the juggling of the two energies. Like how do I, like I am both, and I feel very exalted there that I have more energy. I don't know if that makes sense astrologically, but it feels like coming towards the end of February, there's more energy at our disposal somehow, that after the integration of the first month. And maybe it's because the retrograde planets go direct.
Well, yes, I would agree that there's a whole bunch of layering that happens in February that will give us the ability to rise up to more energy because we're doing less processing.
Aha, that's probably what I'm saying. Now you're at I'm doing the juggling. This is fun. There's real hope on the table. But the lessons are interesting because it does say that you can't just sail through it. You have to put the things that you have learned into
That's
practice.
right.
Right.
That's right.
Yeah, you
That's what
can't
I
say.
meant. Why I think these wrap up sections of both Venus's and Mercury retrogrades are going to be
Uh-huh.
the more important ones because we're knitting together what we've learned anew.
Oh, this is cool. Okay, let's talk about March.
March, yummy. Lots to talk about with March, right? So we're in the Pisces mansion, which is the consciousness of connection of the collective of we are all one. I love the Pisces mansion. I love Pisces moon. I love sun in Pisces because I have a grand water trine in my chart. So when the
Uh-huh.
sun is in Pisces, I feel very connected to my feminine side, my
Mm-hmm.
my relationship with the great mother increases in this month. But it's an absolute yummy watery month. And as I've already sort of indicated, that yummy watery energy is building very powerfully in the first half of the month because in the second week, Sun, Neptune, and Jupiter all in Pisces. Sun, our conscious awareness, already available for a greater sense of connection because that's the mansion the Sun is in, connecting with Jupiter, who is the ruler of Pisces in his own ruling sign, means our conscious awareness is now bathed in spirit.
Right.
Jupiter's there at the same time, which makes the whole thing like explode in a watery, yummy kind of wave of deliciousness. Now,
Mm.
would that were the only energy that we were dealing with, right? Because there's something interesting about, and this may actually be beneficial, Colette, that while all of this water is so watery, Mars, planet of action, Mercury, planet of thinking, thought, and communication, are in Aquarius. Not watery, not emotional. In fact, Aquarius is kind of emotionally detached. So, where this might be a benefit is that if we've got our thinking and our choosing mechanism, Mercury and Mars, sort of working together during the month, that means that we're in a good place to make choices and to follow up with how we think about what we're
Mhm.
choosing. With all that water, it'd be hard to sort of be precise in any sort of a way. So I like the fact that our thinking is being driven by innovation, out of the box choices. Mars in Aquarius means we're willing to make choices that are unusual or
Mhm.
original or innovative, right? Now, this idea that we have access to high thought, innovative thought, is only in the first sort of part of the month, because once we get to around the 10th of March, Mercury is going to leave Aquarius, leave his whole retrograding process behind, and move into Pisces to join the water,
Right.
right? So that first third of the month has a lot of high thought possibility. The whole month has watery yummy. Once we get into the sort of second third of the month, the water is even more intensified because Mercury dives into the mansion of Pisces. And really just the whole idea of the sun moving through a mansion that Neptune is in and that Jupiter's in, spirit and expansion. Um, this is the month I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, it does. It's beautiful. And it's interesting enough because on the tarot, we start with the Knight of Cups, which is a romantic, the sacred, the holy grail, right? That we're seeking something greater than us and we're seeing evidence of it because the Nine of Cups is that happy quality, that sense of like, wow, I'm really in this. I'm in this connection to spirit. I'm feeling this. There's synchronicities, there's evidence, there's a sense of just, I think, a greater sense of spirituality. I think that's what I want to say, and mystical quality to the month,
Yeah,
which is why I like it. There's a
yeah,
real, you know, yeah, there's like a magical piece to this
yep,
month. And what's also really cool, the Emperor comes in that third week, which is, to me, that's when Jupiter is the expansive, it's the biggest planet. It's, the emperor's sovereignty. It's a sense of governing, right? There's a governance that starts to happen. So it's now, what do you do with all this expansion? How do you make it real? And then you're on a journey, because the Six of Swords, it actually shows us the picture where they're on a boat, right? And they're on the water moving forward, and you can't stay here. I think that's the other thing. Like, you'd love to stay and you know what I mean, in Magic Land, but you can't. And that's the other thing. It's like, no, you're on a journey, but take what you can from the beginning of this month, is what this is saying.
Right.
Really be present to it. Don't ignore it, because there is a level of joy that's attached to this too. The other thing that I'm going to say is that there could be, at the very end of March, conversation that governments are having about travel again that are going to be very important, because typically the Emperor card also can represent government. So maybe, things open again for travel, or they close again, but because there's happiness, right? There is an element of that. Like, are we opening up at that point? We'll have to see, because I don't know. Could be one or the other, but no matter what, it brings us to a happy conclusion, is what this says, right? There's a quality of, yummy, you, me, spirit, and also the structure of that. Again, Emperor is structure, it's government, but it's also self-governance, right? The idea of, like, I'm happy and I feel like I can trust myself.
Wow.
Right?
I love the idea that you're getting an intuitive hit about something that moves the collective into potential more travel. Because one of the things that's prominent about 22 is there are a lot of transits to the nodes of the moon, which I won't break down the whole teaching of it, but transits to the nodes of the moon are collective transits.
Right? Yeah, collective. Right, exactly.
The world, just like that. And there happens to be, in March, a sextile between Neptune and the north node of the moon, which means a cloud is potentially lifting.
Right. So this
around
makes
the possibility of the collective to move forward. That's in March, honey.
Right. Well, that's what we're talking about in March.
That's what you're talking about. So I just want to
right.
validate
I might be
your
good. I might be good at this.
Well, so I'm not talking about nodal transits in this conversation because it's too deep. There's too much detail astrologically, but I love that you're picking that up.
So let's talk about April.
Aries season,
Woo-hoo!
Astrological new year. Lots of fire comes in. There's still some yummy Pisces, so we're not kind of done with the yummy, even though conscious awareness is moving into spring, movement, action, cardinal. Cardinal means startup energy. So we're in the startup fire season of the beginning of the astrological year. But we're also, this doesn't really hit to the very last day of the month. So in some ways, a half of April and half of May are going to be intensified by eclipse season, right?
Oh.
So we are in a moment where we're in the first sort of change transformation experience that all eclipses are, that reset. Like, eclipses are like when you turn the computer off and on again to reboot it, and everything that we've worked on for the 6 months prior becomes sort of fully installed. Like, if you put something into your computer and it's not working quite well, you turn it off and on again, and it's like, oh, it works, right? That's what's happening with eclipses. And so the latter part of the month heats up in the way that eclipses amplify all energy. There's a healing sort of possible in the very beginning of the month, right at the top of the month. Aries sun, Mercury now in Aries, will meet up with Chiron in Aries. So that is an awareness of wound, but it could also be an awareness of, like, a sudden sense of something new, wounding, right? So it's an interesting, very fiery start to the month with regard to, we're still tender. We've just come out of, all sorts of retrogrades and putting things back together. So it's just like a healing awareness in the beginning of the month. But right after that sort of buzz of healing, Venus is going to enter Pisces on April 6th. And that is beautiful that Venus is exalted in Pisces. Venus knows no boundaries to the limit or limits to love in the
Yeah.
sign of Pisces, because Pisces is the sign of collective and connection. We are all one. Venus is love. And once she moves into that sign, we have the possibility of understanding love at a much, 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 much greater level. And who's in Pisces ready to receive her right there in the beginning of April, April 8th, is Jupiter.
Ah.
This is that watery yummy. Pisces and Jupiter have a beautiful relationship to us because love and abundance.
Yeah.
They're bedfellows, they're cousins, they're not the same thing, but they're both like the yummiest aspects of being alive and in a body, is that we get to love and we get to create great abundance. So when they come together in the sign of Pisces, man, oh man, that's like love and expansion is all there is, right? So then we get Venus moving into Taurus on the 15th. Not Venus, I'm sorry. Then we get Mercury moves into Venus ruled Taurus on the 15th. So that means our thinking is more aligned with love, in that when the sign that Mercury is in sort of governs the style of thought. And so if Taurus is ruled by Venus, then our thoughts are more loving. And when Mercury moves into that sign. So the yummy pieces are just about as yummy as they get. And then right when we get to the end of the month, that's where it gets a little bit sort of dicey. Mercury is going to zip through Taurus and get into Gemini, where he's going to retrograde. So we are in the retrograde shadow at the 25th of April. He doesn't go retrograde till next month, but he starts the process off right at the end of the month, at the exact time that the new moon, that is a partial solar eclipse in Taurus, hits on April 30th. So that last week of a very yummy month might get a little complex in the mind, because Mercury's not retrograde yet, but he's hinting at stuff to come. And then we have this sort of enormous a new moon that's conjunct Uranus. So we've got this incredible Taurus new moon at the very end of the month that is powerful for setting loving intentions. Sign of Taurus, Venus ruled, right? But it's an eclipse, right? There's enormous importance in this eclipse new moon because it is Taurus.
Right.
And Taurus is about moving towards more love. The nodes of the moon, which is that collective point, have changed signs this year. This is the first time I'm mentioning it, even though they changed signs in January. I'm mentioning it now. The nodes of the moon tell us where the collective is pointing its focus on, saying this way forward. And once the north node of the moon in January moved into Taurus, the collective sense of this way forward is towards love and away from death, south node in Scorpio.
Right.
So to me, this new moon is a moment when we use the transformative power of an eclipse and the power of a new moon intention setting in the sign of love to dial in our intentions to create more love on the planet and in our lives, concomitant with the fact that the nodes of the moon are telling us we must embody more love or we will fall into death.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
Powerful month.
So here's what's so interesting about this, because we know we're in Aries, and yet all the cards that I have here are really Taurian. So they're the pentacles, they're the earth, they're earth. So they help this. They actually show us. It's kind of like, when you're talking about that, the planets are pushing us towards more love, but this is, I'm kissed, right? It's not a concept of love, it's an action, right?
Ooh,
Right? It's the
ooh, I
kiss
like
of love,
that.
as the hand holding, the tangible love. It's not a theory. So this month is about the practicality of how we love and how we take ownership of that love, because the King of Pentacles comes in first, and it's not necessarily a man. It's the experience of that, the sovereignty of. It's also about money. So this is also about healing our relationship to money in some way. Something, maybe the global markets are going to change again. Remember, you bring up the North Node, that there's relational things going on, in the world on a collective level, and the cards are kind of speaking to that too. There could be something that we hear about in the month of April, that where what was unstable becomes more stable. Interesting that we have access to more. You were talking about abundance, right? So you have the Strength card from the major arcana, looking directly at the Nine of Pentacles, which is, every,
Ah,
right, that we've accumulated this
yes,
abundance, and look
accumulation,
what we.
lots of bounty.
Lots of bounting we can share. So there is definite, although the only card that throws things, a wrench into things in here, is that we work so hard, we don't know what to pick. So that's the other thing. It's like this or that. Which way do I go? Which way do I go? And I don't believe that this references the Taurus, Scorpio, North Node, South Node concept. It's more about the hard work that we've done. And now what? That kind of feeling. Like, so there's a slight cynicism. Right, that's still underlying there. The fear of, like, is it too good to be true? Like, is the other shoe gonna drop?
Honey, you're literally talking about Jupiter and Pisces. Jupiter and Pisces says everything is possible.
Everything is possible. So what are you gonna pick?
So what are you going to pick?
What are you gonna pick? It's interesting. So what I like about this is that even though it's a fiery month, it is grounded. It's grounded in actuality, like I said. So it's not theoretical love, it's love in action, boots on the ground, kiss somebody, hold their hand, as opposed to just thinking about it. So let's look at May now. This is cool.
Yeah, eclipse season wormhole, baby.
Oh,
That's
boy,
the thing I gotta say about May, right? Because we really, we talk about the first eclipse as an April thing, right?
Yeah.
But it happens on April 30th, which means
Yeah.
it shuts us into May in what we call the wormhole, which is that crazy period of time between eclipses, where life and energy is amplified and moving fast and overwhelming at times. Everything gets bigger and more intense when we're in a wormhole, and it just makes the month huge. Of course, Sun is in Taurus, right? So we're fully in the Taurus mansion of. I love that consciousness of the forms of love, the actions of love, right? Because that's what Taurus is really all about. So because we're in that Taurus mansion, that idea of more love and love in form is with us for the whole month. It gets a little complicated right around the third of the month, right at the very beginning of the month. Venus is going to enter her detriment in Aries. She's not happy in that fire sign. So that's an interesting emotional dichotomy. It's like we've just been through all of this work on opening our hearts up to more love, and then we're in the mansion of love is grounded and felt in the body, and then right in the beginning of the month, the planet of love is going to go where love is hard to feel.
Right.
So when I talk about Venus moving into Aries, always, I've done this for 25 years as an astrologer, the lesson there is, how can you stay loving in seemingly unloving circumstances?
Right.
Because Venus moving through Aries is a full-on unloving circumstance. She's like, it's too much fire in here. How do you stand it?
That's funny.
So another thing that makes the month a little convoluted is, besides the eclipse wormhole and Venus moving into her detriment, is that Mercury's retrograde shadow carries over into May, and on the 10th of May, that's when she turns around. Right, so she's going to be retrograde for the whole second 2/3 of the month. So that puts mind out of good alignment Heart's a little bit out of her comfortable places, and we're in eclipse season. And that eclipse, the full moon eclipse, happens right smack dab in the middle of the month on May 16th, just as Jupiter leaves yummy Pisces and enters Aries. So I don't even, I mean, at this moment, even as I'm talking about the month, I'm thinking like, weird shit, switching. Thank God the Taurus mansion sort of bridges the whole month, because that is what will keep us sort of grounded and loving. But there's so many changes in energetic direction, especially with Jupiter moving into Aries. Now, this is not a bad placement. In fact, Jupiter in Aries is outrageous for putting your decisions. Remember, what are you going to decide? If Jupiter in Pisces says you can do everything, therefore you need to choose. Well timed, Colette Baron-Reid, because once Jupiter moves into Aries, you better know what you want to manifest, because that energy is going to be out like a shot, because that's what Aries does, right? So it's fiery manifestation possibilities. And Jupiter's going to sail through Aries for the rest of the year. He's not going to retrograde and spend a lot of time here. In true Aries fashion, he's going to be like, woo, let's take this train, wherever it's going to lead us. But understand, we're going to feel that shift energetically in our experience, once that occurs. Then at the very end of the month, around the 24th, Mars comes home to Aries. And conjuncts Jupiter. That's at the 24th, right? That's a big wave of energy.
That's good. I have Mars in Aries. I always feel good when Mars is in Aries.
All right. Well, it certainly finishes the month off with a bang.
With a bang. Okay.
And if we anthropomorphize the planets for a moment, Jupiter moves into Aries and says, let's get going.
Yeah.
But Jupiter can't manifest. Jupiter's a social planet. Mars can manifest because Mars is our bodies in action. We manifest through Mars consciousness. It's Jupiter that says it's possible.
Right.
Right? So that when Mars enters Aries and meets up with Jupiter in Aries, it's like a little party of what are we going to go create? And so you can think of Mars and his meeting with Jupiter on the 24th as a meeting. The planet of action is sitting down with the planet of abundance, making plans. And then as Mars moves around the zodiac for the rest of the year, the entire action of all of Mars for the rest of the year has this meet up with Jupiter along with him. So it's important to be in consideration of what you're creating at this time, even though the month is wildly complex.
So, it's the tarot gives us a glimpse into how we manage and navigate what you said, right? That's the point of doing the cards, right? So,
okay, that makes sense. I mean, right? I think I knew that. That makes sense.
Well, of course you did.
Glad you said that.
Yeah, because they don't just reflect what you just said, although sometimes they do. They're saying, because it's built in, right? There's a built-in what to do. But this month is actually pretty good, as long as you keep your intuition running. Like it's like, because things are going so fast, you can't rely on a map that you think you have while things are rapidly changing in front of you. You got to strap yourself in for the ride of your life, but use your intuition to make sure you know when to turn right or left, right? But there's a lot of hope here. So like what you're saying, the planet of possibilities, Jupiter coming in and telling Mars, like, who knows how to get shit done, right? Come on, let's do it. Yeah. So there's a lot of potential, and there's a lot of business potential this month as well, too. And maybe, again, that's structure around the collective, but there's victories this month. So, and it's funny, the Chariot is in here, and I'm just laughing to myself because Mark and I are going to the F1 race because it's his birthday present, the Formula One racing. I'm giving it to him
sweet.
Just in time for all this insanity that you're talking about. I'm like, But anyway, the Chariot, the car race. But anyhow, this is also a victory over that, like the lack of clarity in some way, right? We get super clear. Like you said, what are you going to actually do? There's an opportunity here to see both sides, to be very clear, because the Chariot is both the black, the white, the how do you see everything? And then be victorious over that on this part of the journey. And then you have, so to remind yourself, the most important piece is to don't lose your hope and trust your intuition to navigate this, because the victory is built into this, right?
Yeah.
And again, it's interesting. The Six of Pentacles looks at everybody, and that is a reminder again to be generous and kind. So even though you're saying Venus isn't happy, in Aries, and then like you have all these different things going on, but there still is the reminder: just be kind and compassionate. Just be a good person.
Right. Be a good
You'll
person.
be able to navigate this.
Bring love into a potentially unloving circumstance, and everybody wins.
Yeah, and really is everybody wins, because that's the Chariot. So that's the sense that, and you know what? Not everybody's going to do this. We're just seeing this as, how do you navigate it? You may not. Like, you may just get, sit in your dirty diaper, like, I don't like this, right? But this is telling you how to manage this. This is a big month with a lot of potential for very good things to happen.
Yep.
All right, last but not least, we have June.
Yes, eclipse
right.
season is in the rear view mirror.
Great.
Mercury's retrograde is in the rear view mirror, although his shadow carries over into the month, so we're still processing things we might have learned about communication and thoughts. But it's such a quieter month. So after a fairly rough early spring, June is a welcome month. Also, the Gemini mansion, for not for nothing, is kind of fun.
Yeah.
It's a mansion of springtime in the Northern Hemisphere and moving out and about in the world in a fun and sort of flirty, springy, chatty sort of way. There's no mistaking that, at least in the Northern Hemisphere, the archetypes of the zodiac also kind of follow the weather a little bit. And so in this time of the year when we're out connecting, being in yummy, springy stuff, the sun is in Gemini, which is all about chattiness and flirtiness and connection and play and delight. It's a light and breezy month compared to others. So Mercury will be wrapping up between June 3rd and June 18th. So it is, in the world of mentality, we are in somewhat of a process, not in the investigative process of a retrograde where we're bumping into the furniture, but our minds are busy making sure we understand what we've just learned. And then Venus and Mars are both in their ruling signs all month. So that idea of when they met up a few months ago and we had the opportunity to balance and integrate masculine and feminine within us, that this is a month where those principles that live in each of us are operating at their maximum, because you've got Mars in Aries, his ruling sign, and Venus in Taurus, one of her ruling sign, really till about the 22nd of the month. And Venus leaves, Mars is still there all month long. So I think that helps make it a quieter month in general, that the heavy duty stuff is behind us. Nothing really major happens during the month. And these rulerships of the planet that govern our body and our action and our choices and our love is in their most favorite places to be.
Oh, that's great. It's so weird. Every month, almost, so the past 6 months, I've had the star card, right? I've shuffled the cards. Again, it's about hope. So this is the futurist. This is the, like the water bearer, right? The Aquarian, the innovator. All this still holds something that reminds us to hold true to our hope. That hope in action. And go ahead.
Can I say something about that? That's powerful, because one of the things that's true about 2022 is that there are no major planetary transits the way there were in 2020 and 2021.
Right.
So we're not in the kind of destructiveness of the old that happened in 20 and 21. We're a little bit more in the what's possible for the future.
Yes.
So I love the idea of hope being a theme
Yeah,
that the
for the
cards
six,
are
yeah,
bringing into the year, because it is a year where those of us on the planet who have hope
yeah,
have to marshal as much as we can so that
yes.
when we move into 23, 24, 25, when planets change signs and shit hits the fan, we are better suited for that future because we marshaled our hope this
Yeah.
year.
Yeah, yeah, because it's interesting as I shuffle the cards, etc., and then
Yes, 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 and it
every
keeps
time
coming.
there's that same card. So this is interesting is the way to use to work with the energy of June is to recognize that you're no longer in the grief-stricken energy. Like you're allowed to have some, you're allowed to play. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, do I have to be on patrol? And it's like you're realizing like the first 6 months of the year you really didn't. But now you're really getting that you didn't. It's like it's
Yeah.
communicating to you. You have passed that nadir point. Maybe you can't pinpoint when it was, but you're not there anymore. And that is a gift of this June month, right? The other thing is that there's a thinking about the constructive way in which hope could become manifest. So it's like talking about it and communicating about it and writing about it and thinking about it and
That's
right,
right. I love that. Yes.
right.
Makes total sense, Gemini.
And I don't know if this makes any sense by looking at the planets, but this card, the Eight of Cups, and the Ten of Swords in that same foursome, is really about knowing that you are walking away from the debris. You know what I mean? Saying like, I got to build something new. I don't think I can find any more in the rubble. Right? It's like,
Ooh, I
yeah.
love that image.
Right. It's like I've got all I
Walk away
can out of the
from
rubble.
rubble.
Now let's build
Yeah,
something new.
build
So
something new.
again, the idea that ideas can only come together when you talk to other people. That's the other. So it's a chatty month, and it's
That's
like
right.
it's a discussion month, which I
Yes.
like. Right.
Time to come together, share ideas.
Sharing
What do we
ideas,
know?
yeah, and you're sharing practical ideas about about hope for the future, because you don't go back to the nadir again. It's done. That's very interesting. We've up leveled here. So if I were to summarize the first 6 months, is like, boy, oh boy, am I ever happy. Other than May, that does look like a bit of a roller coaster ride, but even still, like, I don't consider these readings like a negative. It's more like, okay, this is planetary energies. Everybody's under the same stars. What do we do with it? Like, how's the best way to navigate this? And I got to say, every month there's a reminder about compassion and hope. So no matter what's going on, that's still the thread that takes these 6 months and ties them together.
Beautifully said.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. This was amazing. Dr. Michael Lennox, you are amazing. Michael at michaellennox.com, or michaellennox.com is where you would find him exactly.
That is the website.
And
Yep.
yeah, it was a very, very amazing. Thank you all for watching, and it was amazing to do this with you. Thank you so much, Michael.
You're welcome. My
Yay,
pleasure.
us, 2022. Woohoo!